You know that feeling when you catch your reflection in really harsh lighting? Like maybe you're in a department store fitting room or a bad elevator.
Oh, the elevator lighting is always the worst.
Right. And you suddenly notice this new shadow or a new wrinkle, or maybe your skin just feels visibly thinner.
And your first instinct is almost always to blame the surface.
Exactly. You think, oh, I'm just dehydrated today, or I just need to finally buy that ridiculously expensive moisturizer my friend keeps talking about.
Which is such a common trap, you know? We treat the surface because the epidermis is what we can immediately see and touch.
Right. But treating aging skin with just topical creams is, I mean, it's a lot like looking at a sagging roof and blaming the shingles
Yeah.
when the actual problem is a crumbling foundation.
That's a great way to put it. The structural collapse isn't happening on the roof. It's happening deep underground, in the dermal layer. And it's driven by a biological shift that, well, most surface level treatments simply cannot reach.
And that is exactly where we are taking you today. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are moving past the shingles, past the drywall, and going straight down to the cellular foundation.
To answer a really specific, highly requested, and honestly incredibly complex question.
Right, the big question. Can hormone therapy actually improve your skin's collagen response?
Yes. And to figure this out, we've pulled together a really fascinating stack of materials for you.
Yeah, rather than just reading one opinion, we're looking at a huge synthesis. We've got cutting-edge lab studies from Frontiers on cellular signaling, the official clinical guidelines from the British Menopause Society.
Which are crucial for the medical context here.
Absolutely. And we also have physician-vetted aesthetic protocols from Hote MD on the top treatments being used right now.
It's a phenomenal cross-section of research, really, because it bridges the gap between internal medicine, cellular biology, and aesthetic dermatology.
Which is exactly what you need to understand how hormones essentially act as the master architects of your skin.
But before we get into how to build new tissue, we really have to look at the destruction phase first.
Right. We need to understand the mechanics of why that foundation crumbles in the first place.
Exactly. Which brings us to the cellular factories themselves.
So if we imagine your skin as this massive manufacturing plant, the fibroblasts are the engines operating down in the dermis.
Right, the fibroblasts.
From what I gathered in the research, they are essentially responsible for churning out the big three structural components that keep your skin firm and bouncy collagen, elastin, and hyaluronic acid.
That is a perfect way to visualize it. Fibroblasts are the ultimate multitaskers of the extracellular matrix. And estrogen, in this analogy, is the factory manager.
Okay, the manager.
Yeah, estrogen circulates through the bloodstream, binds to very specific receptors on the surface of those fibroblasts, and signals them to maintain a steady, high-volume production of those vital proteins.
It basically dictates the pace of the entire operation.
It does. But then usually during perimenopause and menopause, estrogen levels start to drop significantly.
So the factory manager essentially clocks out and just doesn't come back.
Right. And the immediate result is that production slows to an absolute crawl. The fibroblasts are still there, but without that constant hormonal directive, they go dormant.
Just sitting there.
Exactly. But the drop in production is actually only half of the crisis.
Right. The other half involves those enzymes, matrix metalloproteinases, or MMPs.
Yes, the MMP.
The sources painted a pretty vivid picture of these. They were essentially the body's natural demolition crew, right?
They are. I mean, in a healthy, youthful system, MMPs serve a really vital purpose. They clean up cellular debris and break down old, damaged collagen.
So the fibroblasts can replace it with fresh tissue.
Right. It's a balanced cycle of removal and replacement. And estrogen plays a crucial role in keeping those MMPs in check. It acts like a leash, basically, preventing them from breaking down healthy tissue.
So when estrogen plummets, the leash snaps.
Exactly. The demolition crew goes completely rogue.
To put it back in the terms of our manufacturing plant, the demolition crew starts taking sledgehammers to the load-bearing walls, totally unchecked.
Unchecked and aggressive. So you're hit with this double whammy. Your body stops making new structural proteins, and simultaneously, those rogue enzymes tear down whatever healthy collagen you have left.
That dual mechanism really explains the sheer speed of the aging process during this window, which actually leads me to a statistic in the research that, honestly, it absolutely stopped me in my tracks.
I think I know which one you're talking about.
The data shows that women can lose up to 30% of their dermal type I and type 3 collagen within just the first 5 years of menopause.
It is a staggering number, 30%.
30% of the skin's structural support gone in half a decade.
And it continues to decline by about 2% each subsequent year.
Wow.
And when you connect this dermal collagen loss to the broader physiological picture, it perfectly mirrors the rate of bone density loss during that exact same 5-year window.
Wait, really? The bone density loss tracks exactly with the skin.
Exactly, because the underlying mechanism is identical. Estrogen depletion leads to the rapid degradation of connective tissue throughout the entire body.
That is such a profound realization. Your skin isn't just deciding to age or, betraying you. It's responding to a massive systemic biological shift.
Right, it's systemic.
So going back to that crumbling foundation metaphor, applying a basic topical moisturizer, when this 30% structural loss is happening, I mean, it's literally just painting over a house that is sinking into the ground.
The paint might look nice, but it doesn't fix the walls.
Exactly. Which leads to the natural question. If hormone replacement therapy, or HRT,
Right.
is the equivalent of pouring new concrete, how does that actually work?
That's the big question.
Yeah, if the factory's shut down, does simply reintroducing estrogen flip the switch back on and rebuild the skin?
Well, let's dig into that because the clinical timeline here is fascinating. It definitely doesn't happen overnight. It happens in distinct biological phases. When systemic hormones are reintroduced, the very first changes patients notice usually occur within 1 to 2 months.
Okay, so pretty quickly.
Yes, but these early changes are almost entirely hydration-based. Estrogen directly stimulates the cells to boost their production of endogenous hyaluronic acid and ceramides.
Which makes sense because hyaluronic acid is essentially just a sugar molecule that binds and holds water, right?
Exactly.
It's much faster for a cell to pump out a sugar molecule than it is to build a complex protein structure like collagen.
Way faster. And producing it from the inside out has to be infinitely more effective than just, smearing a hyaluronic acid serum on the dead outer layer of your skin.
Oh, absolutely. The internal production is far superior because the hydration is locked deep within the dermis where it belongs.
That's why the skin suddenly feels softer and noticeably less dry in those early weeks.
But the true structural repair, what the research calls neocollagenesis, that takes longer, right?
Much longer. Neocollagenesis is the creation of brand new, tightly organized collagen fibers. You generally won't see those clinical effects for 3 to 6 months.
Because collagen is a massive, heavy-duty protein, I imagine it's like weaving a complex climbing rope. It takes time to assemble and cross-link those fibers so they're actually strong enough to support the skin.
That's a great visual.
Mm.
The assembly process is incredibly intricate, but the long-term data on this neocollagenesis is incredibly compelling.
Right. The study showed up to a 30% increase in actual dermal thickness after 12 months of consistent estrogen therapy.
30% thicker. The skin literally becomes a thicker, more resilient organ.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And while estrogen is the primary driver, we also have to acknowledge the rest of the hormonal symphony, right? Like testosterone.
Yes. Testosterone declines as we age too, and it plays a crucial role in maintaining that dermal thickness and regulating sebum or oil production. It keeps the skin lubricated.
The aesthetic guides we reviewed also placed a pretty heavy emphasis on human growth hormone, or HGH. They detailed how HGH drives cellular turnover through something called the IGF-1 signaling cascade.
The HGH cascade is a beautiful biological mechanism. Human growth hormone spikes, usually during deep sleep, and triggers the liver to produce insulin-like growth factor 1, or IGF-1.
Okay.
That IGF-1 travels through the bloodstream, binds directly to skin cells, and commands them to divide and regenerate.
So while estrogen is protecting and building the collagen matrix, the HGH and IGF-1 cascade is actively turning over the cells themselves, keeping the tissue fresh.
Exactly.
Okay, I have to step in here and play devil's advocate for you, the listener. Because hearing all this, it sounds like an absolute biological fountain of youth.
It really does sound like magic on paper.
Right. If hormones can literally rebuild the structural integrity of the skin, boost hydration from within, and force cellular regeneration, why isn't every single dermatologist on the planet handing out HRT prescriptions to anyone who wants to get rid of their wrinkles?
That is the ultimate question. And it requires a serious medical reality check.
Yeah, let's get into the guidelines.
The clinical guidelines from the British Menopause Society and the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists are definitive on this issue. Systemic hormone replacement therapy is a highly complex, powerful medical intervention.
It's not a cosmetic quick fix.
Not at all. It has a very favorable benefit-to-risk profile when used to control severe menopausal symptoms, like debilitating hot flashes, and for protecting bone health.
But it affects the entire body, not just the face.
Right. It's systemic, it is not licensed, and no major medical body recommends it strictly for aesthetic or cosmetic purposes.
Because of the risks?
Exactly. Introducing systemic estrogen and progesterone carries real medical risks. Depending on the formulation, the delivery method, and the patient's medical history, there can be elevated risks for venous thromboembolism, which are blood clots, as well as stroke and certain hormone-sensitive cancers.
A responsible physician is never going to hand over a systemic estrogen patch simply because a patient wants plumper cheeks and fewer fine lines.
The risk-to-reward ratio for pure cosmetics just doesn't balance out.
No, it doesn't.
Furthermore, even if a patient is using HRT for approved medical reasons, timing is everything when it comes to the structural benefits for the skin.
The 10-year sweet spot, right?
Yes. The clinical guidelines point to a specific sweet spot for initiating therapy, which is within the first 10 years of the onset of menopause.
What happens if they wait too long?
Well, if a patient waits too long and that aggressive collagen demolition has been ongoing for 2 decades, estrogen will likely slow down any further decline, but it struggles to fully rebuild a foundation that's been entirely hollowed out.
And that actually leads us to one of the most fascinating aspects of this entire deep dive. The factory manager might come back to work, but the machinery itself gets old.
Yes, the cellular aging.
We have to look at that brand new in vitro study from Athenium Scientific Publishers, because it perfectly illustrates why the skin's response changes over time.
The Athenium study is a brilliant piece of cellular research. They wanted to isolate and measure exactly how differently aged cells respond to identical hormonal signals.
So they took human dermal fibroblasts from newborns' neonatal cells and compared them directly to adult skin cells, right?
Exactly. And to make the experiment as accurate as possible, they brew the adult cells in a triculture.
Meaning they didn't just look at the fibroblasts in isolation, they mixed them with keratinocytes, the cells that make up the outer layer of skin, and melanocytes, which produce pigment.
Right, to artificially rebuild a fully functioning piece of human skin tissue in the lab.
Which is wild.
It is. They created a highly accurate microenvironment. Then, they exposed both the newborn cell cultures and the adult cell cultures to 17-beta-estradiol, which is the most potent form of estrogen.
Okay, for how long?
For 48 hours. And the discrepancy in the results was just massive. Under the exact same hormonal stimulation, the neonatal cells produced 7 to 8 times more type I collagen than the adult cells.
7 to 8 times more. That is a staggering difference in productivity.
It really is. It's a textbook demonstration of cellular senescence. As cells age, they degrade. The older adult cells still possess the estrogen receptors on their surface. They receive the chemical signal loud and clear.
But their internal manufacturing machinery is sluggish.
Exactly. The translation of that signal into actual, usable collagen protein is fundamentally diminished compared to the pristine, highly efficient machinery of newborn cells.
Which raises a very practical dilemma for you, the listener. What if your adult cells are just a bit tired and not responding robustly? Or, honestly, more importantly, what if systemic HRT is medically off the table for you due to a personal or family history of health risks?
Which is a reality for many people.
Are we just out of luck? Or are there other ways to turn the ignition key and get that collagen factory running again?
Fortunately, cellular biology offers us alternative keys. But to understand how they work, we need to quickly look at the locks on the doors of your fibroblasts.
Okay, let's talk about the locks.
Your cells actually have 3 main types of estrogen receptors: ER-alpha, ER-beta, and a membrane receptor called GPER.
And systemic estrogen is a master key, right? It opens every single ER lock in the entire body.
Exactly. That's why it carries those systemic risks. It stimulates the breast tissue, the uterine lining, the cardiovascular system, everything. But science has developed compounds that only fit into very specific locks.
The first of these alternative keys mentioned in the scoping review are SERMs. That stands for selective estrogen receptor modulators, with medications like raloxifene or tamoxifen.
SERMs are brilliant synthetic compounds because of their dual nature. In pharmacology, they can act as an estrogen agonist in certain tissues, meaning they bind to the lock and stimulate the cell, just like real estrogen.
But in other tissues, they act as an antagonist. They jam the lock and block estrogen from binding. I picture it like handing a valet key to a parking attendant. When you give them the valet key, it only opens the doors you want them to access, like the driver's side and the ignition. But it keeps the trunk and the glove box securely locked.
The valet key is an exceptional analogy.
Thanks. So in the body, a SERM acts like that valet key. It can turn on the collagen factories in the skin and the bone-building cells, but it keeps the trunk and glove box, like the sensitive breast and uterine tissues, safely locked, completely avoiding the unwanted systemic proliferation.
Exactly. Preclinical studies demonstrate that in the skin, these specific SERMs can stimulate collagen production and inhibit the destructive MMP enzymes without causing the broad physiological impacts of traditional HRT.
That's huge.
It is. And beyond the synthetic options, nature actually provides its own version of these selective keys, phytoestrogens.
These are the plant-derived compounds, right? Things like genistein and dateine, which are found heavily in soybeans, and resveratrol from grapes.
Yes. And the Frontiers scoping review went incredibly deep on their mechanisms. What makes phytoestrogens so valuable is their binding affinity.
Which lock they prefer.
Right. Remember those different locks, ER alpha and ER beta? ER alpha receptors are heavily associated with cellular proliferation and division, which is why overstimulating them carries risks.
But ER beta receptors are highly associated with protective, antifibrotic, and anti-inflammatory effects.
And the plant compounds heavily prefer the safer lock.
The ER beta.
Exactly. Phytoestrogens tend to bind much more strongly to the ER beta receptors. When they lock into ER beta in the skin, they trigger a cascade that reduces oxidative stress, calms inflammation, and promotes the synthesis of the extracellular matrix without aggressively driving cell division.
It is a highly targeted protective mechanism.
It really is.
The sources also point to advancements in topical estrogen delivery, specifically compounds like MEP. This is a non-hormonal estrogen-like molecule designed to be applied directly to the face as a cream or serum.
MEP is a fascinating innovation. It's engineered to stimulate those local estrogen receptors right there in the dermal tissue of the face.
But the chemical structure is designed so that once it has delivered the signal, the skin's natural enzymes metabolize it and completely inactivate it before it can ever enter the bloodstream.
Exactly. It delivers local nourishment and stimulation with virtually zero systemic full-body impact.
So we have the master key of HRT, the valet keys of SERMs, the botanical keys of phytoestrogens, and localized topicals. Having a way to chemically turn the key and rebuild that biological foundation is vital.
But that's only half the story.
Right, because according to the physician-vetted aesthetic guide from HotMD, the clinical results go completely off the charts when you combine this biological supply chain with modern physical interventions.
They call it the ultimate 2026 anti-aging protocol. Synergistic aesthetics.
Synergistic aesthetics is the concept where 1 + 1 = 3.
To grasp why the synergy is so explosive, we have to look at energy-based devices, or EBDs. In the aesthetic world, this covers treatments like radiofrequency microneedling, which combines needles with heat and fractional CO2, or erbium lasers.
Right. If you spend any time on social media, you've probably seen videos of these treatments. The patient's face is often red and inflamed afterward. They look pretty intense.
They look intense because they are intentionally creating trauma.
Controlled trauma.
Right. These devices work by causing a highly controlled mechanical or thermal injury deep within the dermis. This vaporizes microscopic columns of old tissue. The body instantly detects this damage and triggers a massive wound-healing cascade.
It sounds an internal alarm.
Exactly. It recruits macrophages to clean up the area and commands the fibroblasts to urgently produce massive quantities of fresh collagen and elastin to repair the site.
But, and this is the massive catch that ties our entire deep dive together, the fibroblasts can only build that new tissue if they actually have the biological resources and the hormonal signaling to do so.
That is the limiting factor of aesthetics.
Right. If an aggressive laser treatment is performed on postmenopausal skin that is completely devoid of estrogen, the body sounds the alarm. The fibroblast workers rush to the construction site. But they don't have any bricks or mortar. They are biologically depleted.
Yes. The mechanical injury from the laser creates a massive demand for new collagen. But hormone therapy, whether systemic or local, is what provides the biological supply chain.
So when a physician combines systemic HRT, or even localized topical estrogen, with these energy-based devices, or injectable biostimulators like Sculptra, the results are exponentially better and longer-lasting than either treatment could ever achieve in isolation.
You're providing the demand and the supply simultaneously.
You're basically creating a controlled crisis with the laser to shock those sluggish, tired adult cells awake, and the hormone therapy acts as the fully funded emergency response team, arriving at the site with infinite resources to rebuild the structure stronger and denser than it was before the injury.
The mechanism is flawless. The laser forces the clearance of the old, disorganized tissue, And the estrogen ensures that the new replacement tissue is constructed with dense, highly organized, youthful collagen fibers rather than just weak, chaotic scar tissue.
It is brilliant. So, to distill this massive stack of cellular research, medical guidelines, and aesthetic protocols down to a core takeaway for you, can hormone therapy improve your collagen response?
The answer is a resounding yes.
Yes, it is the biological foundation that directly stimulates your cellular factories to produce structural proteins while simultaneously keeping the demolition crew from destroying the matrix you have left.
However, the critical caveat remains that systemic HRT is a profound medical tool with broad physiological consequences. It's not a superficial cosmetic fix.
Exactly. But armed with this understanding of cellular mechanics, you now know exactly how your skin functions from the inside out. You can have a highly informed conversation with your doctor about whether hormonal optimization or utilizing alternative keys like phytoestrogens and specialized topicals aligns with your personal health profile.
Before we wrap up, we want to leave you with one final provocative thought drawn from the very edges of the research we reviewed today.
Yeah, this part blew my mind.
We discussed that Athenium study earlier, highlighting how adult fibroblasts responded 8 times less to estrogen than newborn cells due to cellular aging.
Right.
Well, in biology, we call this state senescence. As cells endure damage over decades, some of them start functioning properly, but they refuse to undergo natural cell death. We refer to them as zombie cells.
Zombie cells.
Yeah. They just sit there in the dermis, taking up space and secreting a toxic sludge of inflammatory chemicals that actively degrade surrounding collagen and can even infect neighboring healthy cells.
If our adult tissues are bogged down by these zombie cells, it raises a wild sci-fi level question. Could the next massive frontier in anti-aging be xenotherapeutics?
Exactly.
What if, before we even bother giving the skin new hormonal signals or hitting it with a thermal laser, we discover a medical way to completely hunt down and clear out those zombie cells?
It shifts the entire paradigm. I mean, you can hire the absolute best architect and source the finest building materials in the world, but you cannot build a stable, towering skyscraper on a lot that is still filled with toxic debris.
You have to clear out the rubble before you can ever hope to pour the new concrete.
Exactly.
It is something for you to ponder long after this deep dive ends. Until next time, keep learning.